Good morning. So for those of you that watched our live stream last night, it was a little bit long, a little bit drawn out. There's some information in there that should be condensed and put into a short video that you can share easily with your friends. So here it goes. There are 4 men right now in jail for allegedly conspiring to murder RCMP officers. These 4 men were part of a demonstration in Coutts, Alberta, a couple years ago now. During the same time, there was a protest happening in Ottawa. Millions of Canadians descended on the Capitol to our Parliament to talk with our politicians, specifically our Prime Minister, regarding his unethical, irresponsible, and unconstitutional infringements on our rights and freedoms, in that we could not travel across our own border or at times within our own country on federally regulated carriers unless we subjected ourselves to an unnecessary and now proven harmful medical intervention, which we didn't want. The Prime Minister didn't like this. As a matter of fact, he got fake COVID and ran and hid from the people. But even more than that, while we were in transit on our way to Ottawa, him and his cabinet had discussions on using powers to stop the protests in Canada. And the powers they wanted to use was the Emergency Measures Act, which hasn't been used since his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, used it during the FLQ crisis. You hear that? They were already talking about this as we were in transit on our way to Ottawa. Now, this is available in Freedom of Information stuff that's all over the internet from other outlets. I'm not media, which is why I can tell you these things. So, the Prime Minister and his cabinet were talking about how to use these powers. There is rumor and suggestion that our government directed the RCMP to find specific individuals in order to justify their implementation of the Emergencies Act. This is referenced in the decision that was made in the Emergency Measures Commission inquiry that happened shortly after. It was mentioned that the Coutts situation was pivotal and was the justification to implement the Emergency Measures Act. It is interesting, though, that only one person from that demonstration, Mr. Marco Hugenboss, was invited to testify. There were numerous RCMP that were invited to testify, but only Marco. Pardon me, there was a couple invited, others, but they couldn't make it. Now, here's the interesting thing. Marco has been speaking or spoke to members of the RCMP at a high level on in the area of investigation. And they have said things like, there was pressure from politicians to make this happen. There was pressure from politicians to find justification for the Emergencies Act so they could trample old ladies with horses in Ottawa. They have said, this is kind of disturbing. We haven't seen these things happen before. The defense lawyers and even other people that are people on the other side have said, the way this stuff is progressing and the way these guys are being treated is not right. This isn't how things normally work. Now, why would that be? Could it be that our Liberal-appointed judge, who is a 26-time Liberal supporter in the form of financial donations, is willing to sacrifice the lives and the livelihoods of 4 men to protect the Prime Minister and the Liberal government? Is it possible? I don't know. But we should probably find out. Here's another interesting tidbit of information. Over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, I've heard people say all sorts of arguably stupid things about standing up for themselves in a violent manner that results in, well, more violence. Who told the RCMP to send hot little undercover female officers into the Coutts demonstration to cozy up to young men and encourage them to beat their chest and talk tough and then use that as justification to do what they did in Coutts? The RCMP broke the law. They damaged equipment. There was no justification for that. As a matter of fact, they got their pee-pee slapped for it. Who ordered the RCMP to send women into that demonstration and entrap these men? That didn't happen in Ottawa. They didn't send little honeypots in there to try and get guys to talk tough. Why did they do it in Coutts? Maybe because they know everyone in southern Alberta has guns. Why is it that the RCMP released pictures of guns that people owned legally and lawfully, registered firearms, and spun a narrative that there was this big insurrection happening? Newsflash, what people were saying in Coutts and all over the country, this is Canada. What people were saying was, I am willing to die for my rights. I am standing up for my rights and freedoms, and I am not backing down. Well, sorry folks, but in Canada that's illegal. You're not allowed to stand up for your rights. You're not allowed to fight back when the men with guns come to take your rights away. You have to subject yourself to the mercy of the court here in Canada. That's just the way it is. If you want to change that, you know what? Work on it. Change the laws, change the Constitution, do whatever you got to do. But at this time, we are not allowed to do that. I've heard thousands of people say that. But in this case, 4 men that said things like that, not that they were going to conspire to murder people, but that they would stand up for themselves and not back down in the face of a tyrannical government that was trying to take away our rights. That was used as justification to trample peaceful protesters in Ottawa. That was the justification to shoot people with tear gas canisters. Women reporters. That was the justification to round up peaceful protesters who were sitting down in solidarity or on their knees when the RCMP and these weird guys in whatever uniform showed up. Round them up and take them to the outside of Ottawa, drop them off in the cold and no coat. That was the justification. Now, it's also rumored that the defense for these 4 men uncovered some evidence in disclosure that suggested that the RCMP was colluding with the Crown and the government to find this stuff to justify the powers they wanted to use to trample a protest in Ottawa. There is a piece of paper floating around out there with disclosure that wasn't redacted by accident that shows this stuff. But guess what? This Liberal appointed judge, 26-time donor to the Liberal Party of Canada, decided that this evidence wasn't to be made public and it wasn't to be part of the trial. That's weird. What happened to transparency and accountability from our government and the judiciary? What are they so scared of? What are they hiding? What was in that envelope that is worth sacrificing those 4 men's futures for? No. You know what? You can shut your stupid mouth if you're saying, oh, the charges are very serious. Yes, the charges are very serious, and there are many people who have been charged with very serious crimes who are innocent until proven guilty, which is exactly why, even though they're charged, like the guy that just murdered somebody in Banff, they will be released on bail because they are still innocent and not to be subjected to the punishment before they're found guilty. Why is it different with these men? Why is it that the government needs to be so strong-armed and heavy-handed with anybody that speaks out against them? Just a question. I mean, they fined me $30,000 for the crime of protesting, although it wasn't actually a crime because the mandates here in Alberta were illegal. But why is it that the government is using things like this to scare people into submission? Well, guess what? I'm not scared. Neither is Marco. And you know what? Neither were those 4 guys that were willing to die for their rights and their freedoms. And you shouldn't be scared either. And you should start asking questions as to why this is happening. You should start asking questions as to why our Liberal, federally appointed judges are allowed to do the things that they're doing. It's bullshit, and it has to stop.